I came by the Matua as a ship. It was hard, very hard. I don't know who I turned to. You know how someone, whatever your parents says, right or wrong, that's it. It was my parents' choice for us children to do well. I remember I often write to my mom, I got no pillowcases, things like that. But after I stand on my feet and be a good citizen and work and think the way our father taught us.
Te huia ki te rangi, te huia ki te whenua, te huia ki te ngākau o ngā tangata. Ko te mea nui, ko te aroha. Tihei mauri ora. Ko Red Hill te maunga, ko Papakura te awa, ko Ake rawa, ko Sasoli, Alefaio rawa, ko New Guinea toku tīpuna, ko Manunu rawa, ko Siautu tai ki Hamoa, ko le ainga Manunu rawa, ko Siautu toku hapu, ko tu manu ai le tūlongolongo toku marae, ko Reverend Matawai rawa, ko Siautu oku mātua, ko le ena Siautu Alefaio toku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Tūlou, tūlou, tūlou nā lava. E nuu atu ia o tau pa ia whaale atu nuu, o le a au leo o iai, o a o Samoa, o le ia I vivia. A o le nei teimi, o le a whanga tonu le malama, ma vili tonu fo I le ifia maina. Kia orana katoa toa I te aroa maata o Yesu Mesia. Ma aloe lelei on this happy Tongan Language Week. Whakalofa lahi atu ki matolu osi. Taloha ni Sambula Vinaka. And a very warm greeting from the nations of our beloved Pacific. This morning I wish to acknowledge the program conveners of the New Zealand Psychological Society for putting together a great conference, with special thanks to Pamela, I think she's around, her team, Haika, who was here this morning, and various committees of the Society. Congratulations on this, your Jubilee year. To my great colleague, warrior, friend, and long-time Bicultural Society steward, and I guess in my heart, rangatira, Dr. Waikare Moana Waitoki. Thank you for continuing to pave the way for bicultural partnership, participation and protection of Indigenous self-determination within the society. Your hard work and dedication continues to flourish and grow. I am indebted to you and the Bicultural Committee of the Society for your ongoing graciousness towards us as your tuakana, or kazis, from the Pacific. Today, I honour you and congratulate you on such a great achievement. We're in a pivotal time in our nation's history. There's been a change of guard at the highest of levels. Minister of Social Development, Honourable Carmel Sepuloni, probably said it best on her Twitter page when she wrote, 13 Māori and Pacific ministers being sworn in today. So excited to be a part of this government. Actually, the defining difference from this government to previous ones is the amount all serving at the same time. And so for me, at this time of the New Zealand Psychological Society's Jubilee year, I salute you. as a society. I salute you for celebrating 50 years of bringing together all of us, the family of psychology. And so for me, when I was reflecting on this time in my own life, and this time of it being a Jubilee year, I drew on my Pacific forefathers, who I guess can sometimes sit at odds, which is what I'm going to be talking about, with our practice in terms of our biblical interpretation of the year of Jubilee. The significance of this milestone is not only that the New Zealand Psychological Society has reached 50 years, but that it is also symbolic of it being a sacred year. A year of freedom and of celebration, of bringing things back into balance, where there would be no great imbalance between the wealthy and the poor. And the value of land would stabilize as we allow the land to just rest and replenish. Wayfinding is the process of traveling over unknown or unmarked spaces and places. And Polynesian voyagers are described as the best wayfinders in history. They traveled the vast distances of the largest oceans in the world, the Pacific, navigating only by traditional knowledge, for example, the sun, the stars, and other natural instinctive cues. This presentation is my own wayfinding journey in psychology as a Samoan woman and daughter of the Pacific. We are Aotearoa New Zealand. We are the Pacific. And so there ends my very formal introduction. And now we get into the wayfinding journey, which is obviously going to be a little bit up and down and roundabout. So if you can hang in there for a little bit of a turbulent ride, what I'm going to take you through over the next just under an hour now is, I guess, my own journey, as I shared before, through this last 18 years. I was registered in 2001 in educational psychology. You've read the bio, so I guess you all know me by now. But coming through the ranks of psychology wasn't easy for me. It was a really lonely journey. It was one where I was still trying to configure in my mind what these words in English were in the textbook of psychology. I know English is your first language, but it actually isn't mine. I was born in Dunedin, where my father was at Knox College. And then maybe 6 weeks old, we travelled up to the heart of New Zealand, I would say, South Auckland. Can I get an amen? Oh, look, see, we're all from South Auckland over here. So I was raised in Otara, but then I was bred out deeper south, the true south, in Papakura. Can I get a kura heart? Obviously, no one here is from Papakura. And so I think for me, I was reflecting on this whole theme about te torino haere whakamua whakamuri, this spiral that connects. To me, that's how I read it. You know, it's not just the past, the present, and the future, like in a linear fashion. We're going back, going today, going forward, going back. That's the way, find a way. So you're going to feel like you're on a little bit of a, what is she doing? I'm feeling a little bit rough in patches. But to me, this is how I've experienced my journey being in the unknown space that is psychology, really, for me as a daughter of the Pacific. And it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of work in this with our students, looking at cultural competency for non-Pacifica psychologists and students of psychology. And I look at this wording and it says, you know, we undertake this process of reflection on our own cultural identity and then recognize the actual impact of our personal culture on our clients' on our professional practice. So I took this and I'm using it in this presentation as kind of a metaphor, meaning not his or her, but psychology. What is psychology's own cultural identity? Because to me, that's what I struggled with. I knew my whaasino manga, I knew where I came from, I just had no idea what these words on the page of psychology, where did they come from? And that was my problem, really, because I was navigating the mean streets of South Auckland when I first, so prior to getting my registration in 2001, I actually worked as a diagnostic interviewing in the SIF social services, and I thought I could do my master's at the same time. Wow, was I wrong. And I was fresh out of university, actually here. I did my undergrad here, I did my master's here in education, focusing on educational psychology. And to walk back after all these years having been here, I'm like, wow, this is 21st century present right now. I walk into this lecture theatre and I think, gosh, I want to be a student today. So flash. These things that just come up and don't whack you in the forehead, you know, those awkward moments when you, actually, our spot was always down the back. As Pacific students, who's down the back? Oh yeah, all those Pacific students, they're down the back, hiding down there, I can see you now. No, I'm only joking. They used to do that to me when I was in the lecture theatre. Anyway, I fast track back to the present, and I guess for me, the difficulty navigating my entry into psychology as a practitioner, as opposed to what I was learning, that interface, that nexus, that was the difficulty. Because what we're actually learning in our textbooks, or what we're learning, wasn't the reality of what I was finding in practice. And to me, my superstar go-to, I don't know, people say when you do your PhD, you have to have some kind of great theoretical master, right? Well, that's my master navigator right there. Matawai Alefaio, my own father, who introduced me to Vygotsky. Not to the rock, although the rock is quite significant in this presentation, because obviously we're now in the 21st century. And you may be wondering, how does she go from SIF's diagnostic interviewing to the rock in a split second like that, right? Well, I would like to think that, not Vygotsky, but I'd like to think that a lot of what we've been doing in psychology is navigating what we think is in the center, right? But what happens in the margins for us is specific. For example, someone like The Rock, Paris Goebel, Lance Savali, they're international hip-hop artists. They're mega superstars in their own right. They are children of the Pacific diaspora. I mean, and I'm thinking, how did he get there? Did he have a psychologist along the way? Did he get into trouble? No, the story goes that he was actually sent back to New Zealand because he got into trouble with the gangs in LA. And guess who were his psychologists here? His ainga, his family. His family reared him back to who he is, back to who he is, back to who he is. And I say that who he is repetitively, because often we lose our way as children of the diaspora. And now he was the highest paid actor 2017. And I wish I had him on speed dial, because I know you'd rather see him than me, but I don't, unfortunately. And so who are we? I mean, who is this specific population in Aotearoa, New Zealand? Because if you haven't already found out, you're actually sitting in the Polynesian capital of the world. So if we've got any international people who have just come into Auckland, this is the Polynesian capital of the world. Did you know that? Did anyone know that? Okay, so I'm repeating myself. Everyone knows that. Has anyone been to the flea market on Saturday in Otara? Oh, I see many hands now. All right, so people have crossed the bridge. Because I actually work at Massey University and I'm based in Albany, and every time I ask that question, no one has crossed the bridge, to my horror and my surprise. So when I redeveloped or reset this program, one of our papers, the first thing for me to do was actually to build in there going to the Polynesian Festival. Has anyone been to the Polynesian Festival? It's good to know. Good to know. See, you're all learned. You don't need me anymore. We can finish and go off and have coffee upstairs. So you know that we're a third of the Pacific population are children. So we're a young, we're a youthful, we're a fast-growing population. Did you know we all go to church? Yes, see some heads nodding. So 73% obviously all go to church. And why am I actually explaining this to you? I will show you along the way. Because while there's a lot of us at church, and while we're a young and youthful population, we also earn the lowest personal income. So the flip side to the rock, and the flip side to Lantsavali and Parascobal, is that we also have the lowest median income in the whole stratosphere of Aotearoa New Zealand. And so it's really important for me that today, as I've got the mic, and I'm not going to do a mic drop after, but as I've got the mic, and I guess it's timely because we're 50 years in as a society, I wonder whether it's time for us to begin to think about why it's important to invest in the success of those that are on the margins. Because actually 1 out of 8 workers under 39 are going to be Pacific. So if we're an aging population, I don't mean to be rude, but do you know who's going to wipe your... Who's going to be looking after you? Yeah, exactly. So we're a young, we're a youthful, we're a growing population, and we need to understand what actually makes them tick. And so for me, that meant going back when I decided in practice in around about 2007, I was earning quite a lot of money, as you do in private practice. How many private practitioners out there? Oh, all scared to raise your hand because you earn over the median income, eh? You're not on living wage. I know that. So for me, I thought that was it. I'm on the rise. I'm heading into the stratosphere of financial freedom. And then, well, I get this call. Not from anyone in particular, but just a higher call. And I actually ran away for 5 years because I thought, oh, no way. I'm not going back to be a student again. There's no way I want that lifestyle. I'm on the rocks, fast lane now. I'm heading up to being the highest paid. No, I'm not. I never will be. Psychologists don't get paid high enough, and I know that. They all know that. Anyway, I went back to Samoa as part of my doctorate, and I underwent a process called whaafaletui. In 2008, I was tasked by the Department of Corrections to redevelop, deliver, and write a theory manual and a program manual for their rehabilitation program for Pacific male violent offenders. The first graduates, I'll never forget this date, graduated on the 8th of the 8th, 2008. And it was a year before that I had started my PhD journey. And I was thinking to myself, so now, is at the time, they wanted us to merge. Well, you're all great CBT practitioners out there. You all know the evidence for it. I don't need to tell you how great a Grand Master Slam is for CBT. They wanted us to merge CBT in some form of Pacific knowledge. And they said, just merge it, just bring it together. It's no problem. You know how to do it. I don't think so. That is not what I'm going to do. Because schooled at the feet of my own master navigator, I recognize that you can't just bring these two knowledge bases together and just think they're going to work. We actually have to understand the essence of Sa'ili Matangi. I myself needed to understand the essence of Sa'ili Matangi. So I sat at the feet of my other forefathers and master navigators, the late Tanuvasa Tōwhaiono, the late Sione Waka, cultural mātua who are Tongan and Samoan. We had a Niuean family therapist who was female. And as I sat at their feet, I recognized that actually what I've termed our Pacific Indigenous knowledge, that's the foundation. So se'ilimatangi means in search of good winds. It's a metaphorical proverb. And when you understand se'ilimatangi in the context of Whaasamoa, it's already predetermined. It's healing. It's a healing metaphor. People know when they're sick, they say, "Kakawo se'ilimatangi I," or "Kakawo se'ilimatangi o," which means, "Oh, let's go and search for winds in this place," or we might go search for winds in that village, or we might go search for winds in this direction, because that's going to give us healing. They know. So instinctively, I knew for me, we can't just merge these two. We actually have to make the foundational platform se'ilimatangi, the Pacific Indigenous knowledge. From there, you are then able to build the framework, and you'll see all the different types of therapeutic processes coming out. So for me, I took on this journey in an academic sense to try and articulate this deeper investigation that we needed to have. And so for me, I likened cultural historical theory, or Vygotsky's framework of understanding the crisis in psychology. Because to me, what he was saying is that at the philosophical level, when psychology was becoming a science, that's where actually the crisis was for us. And the practitioners were screaming out, "Hello." So this was way before I encountered him in 2007. And so for me, I recognized that our cosmology, and in going back to our forefathers and in sitting at their feet and in dialoguing and what I call a dialectical Dalanoa analysis, where we go backwards and forwards, because it's in the interactions that the new thing comes. That the Alefaio, or the foundation of Whaasamoa, in terms of its cosmology as a holistic culture, is actually others-centered. So when we try to engage them and ask them, "Oh, how are you today?" And you begin to start, well, how many, or you all should know, your assessment, you'll go straight into your questions. You might, I don't know, I won't go there. I'll pause. What I mean by others-centered is that for Samoans, they find themselves in their family, in their community, in their village, what's around them. So when you ask me, "Oh, how are you today?" I'm thinking, "Oh, I don't know, I'm okay." I'm thinking, how's my dad? How are my brothers and his kids? My late mum's not here, so is she with me here right now? Of course. We find our value centered in others. And so why is that really important when we're understanding things like family violence, for example? Well, because most of our offending in the family violence space is actually against our own family members or against a loved one. So if you understand that we're centered in others, you'll understand why this conflict happens. We have a Samoan proverbial saying, "E fo leala mea," or "E fo leala mea nu'u," which basically means that there's a type of starfish, and when you stand on it, it's a poisonous starfish. But the only antidote for it is actually the same starfish. So for fo leala mea means that same starfish is the only one that can suck out the poison. So if we're thinking of Samoans, for example, being other-centered, to understand family violence, we also need to understand that only then can this family, or the values of this family, or the values of Whaasamoa, or the principles of Whaasamoa are the only things that can also heal. And so why is it that we actually think about this today? Because actually that's how much it costs us. If we don't begin to rethink the way we're doing psychology, I'm not sure going forward if we will have the capacity to deal with what we need to be dealing with now. So for me, I guess troubling the line of inquiry at that critical level was really important. Because otherwise, our science gets into these dangerous kinds of thinking. Because I don't know if you think the same way I do. Well, actually, I know you don't think the same way I do, which is why I'm talking. But to me, the greatest humanitarian crisis of all time in Aotearoa, New Zealand right now is our prison population. And the reason I say that is because I walk in there and all of my Pacific brothers, cousins, uncles are in there. And I'm thinking, why are you here? Why are you here? That to me is the greatest travesty. And I'm looking at this room because we're all members, or if we're not, we're going to be members of the Psychological Society. That's a humanitarian crisis of mega proportions. And I don't know what I need to do to wake us all up, but that's the truth. Drop the mic. I guess I'm really passionate because I'm tired. It's been a long journey, 18 years now in psychology as a practitioner. But we're still, I don't know. Honestly, it takes courage. And we've been navigating for a long time on the margins now. Bicultural society, your own people, they're navigating amazing things at the forefront, revolutionizing psychology in their own way. To me, where it lies is at the language of the heart. And we've really missed that mark in corrections inside, for sure. And that's the whole reason why Sa'ili Matangi exists today. Because none of the guys were taking up any of their programs. And I always ask, well, haven't you got the best science in the world? Isn't CBT, DBT, motivational interviewing, ACT, ABC, XYZ? I thought all those things are working. I'm really sorry to tell you the truth. If they were working, why are they still in there? Why have we got high recidivist rates? Seriously, guys. Why? The number one fundamental question in psychology is always to ask, why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you're doing, right? We always ask, why? But why? But why? And I sound repetitive because my niece does that to me, right? I ask her a question, she goes, but why? And you ask her, but why? But why? And I think, oh, you're going to make a great psychologist when you're older. And I guess that's why I'm here, because I'm asking you, why do we do what we do? If we know, in terms of, I know we all talk about evidence, but I want to flip that script. I want to flip that script. Because actually it's about practices for new populations in new countries that are going to re-inform our current evidence. Because where's the evidence for Pacific people in Aotearoa, New Zealand? We don't have any. Because when psychology was developing in the halls of Europe, and then they were manufactured in the universities of America, and then they were imported into Aotearoa, New Zealand, we didn't exist. We weren't here that time. Or maybe we were, but we were a smaller number. But we still import programs from the States, for goodness sake. When my community have been developing programs for the last 30, 40 years off their back, but because they don't have the evidence base, or because the government funds them after they've done the innovation, it's too late. They're on the go, constantly developing, innovating, creating, looking after their own. And by the time we do our formative evaluation, well, hello, they've already moved to the new thing. So what does that mean? To me, it means our methodology is flawed, guys. It means at our philosophical level, we have to ask ourselves, what went wrong? That's our new problems. These are our new problems. The streets of South Auckland, it's not just South Auckland now, it's all over Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's not a new phenomena for us in South, the street gangs. But in psychology, this is our master navigators that we look to deal with these guys. Hello. So my challenge really today is we need to go back in this 50th year of Jubilee, because that also is what's significant about the 50th year of Jubilee, that we could actually go back to lost traditions. We could actually go back to things that actually guided our forefathers and our ancestors along the way. We could go back to those knowledges. We could go back to those places and those spaces to reharmonize, to rebalance. And so Se'ili Matangi looks like this. It's a holistic framework that's based on core principles. Whiangainga, whawhialoai, whātapuia, wha'lelenga. It's a navigational journey. It's a program that was originally roughly around 28 weeks, now around about 17 weeks. Although there's Samoan principles, the idea is that we start with Samoan because it's half of the Pacific population in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and then the Cook Islands would build one, Tongan would build one, Niuean, and so forth and so forth. And their Indigenous Pacific or Indigenous Tongan principles would come, and there would be a different program along the way. But we needed to start somewhere so that we recognize the new framework that we need to begin working in. And so these core principles around covenant relationships, relational space, transgressing the sacred space, and restorative healing practices, these are the core principles that our Se'ili Matangi facilitators are trained in. And so 10 years on, we actually now have evidence. In the review, it indicated 3 things: a reconnection to God, to family, and to culture and community. And basically, overall, that it was effective in facilitating change. And I guess if anything, that to me indicates that we're on the right track. That in this marginal space, man, I give it off to Department of Corrections. Whoever's sitting here, clap your hands, pat yourself on the back. Unbeknown to them, they gave space, they gave way, they provided an element within their own working space for us to recreate therapeutic ways of healing based on Pacific Indigenous knowledge. 2 things that were quite profound in this review were that we shifted from co-facilitation, co-gendered facilitation, meaning male and female, to male-only facilitation. And a big component of this program is the whono ainga. So male facilitators were advised to us by our mātua. Obviously, as the number 1 feminist in the group, I was like, excuse me guys, it shouldn't make a difference. And they turned around and they're, hey, little girl, shh. Whakulu mea whai wailoa. If I tell you what to do, just go do it. I was like, oh, right, okay, because you're my master navigators. Of course, they think it's easy, but it took me 2 years of persistent, what's a colourful word, negotiation with the Department of Corrections to convince them that this was actually okay. And some of those deliberations were not very easy. We had quite a few strong psychologists who continue to push for co-gendered facilitation, our own Pacific female facilitators. And also within the realm of Pacific, we're asking, why? Why only males? And the reason is because we had shifted the platform. The foundation is now whiangainga. So if you understand whiangainga in the Samoan is a Samoan concept that was originally given to the brother-sister relationship. So Julia talked to this, Dr. Julia Ioane, she talked about this last year. So if you're here last year, I'm leveraging off of her great entry into society for us. Thank you, Julia. So that covenant relationship is really important, because that covenant relationship means that while they're not necessarily going to talk, the male, they're going to respect the females, right? So they're not necessarily going to open up fully because of that dynamic. Well, it's more stronger in the Tongan culture than it is in Samoans. So Tongan men are even more deeply entrenched in that fundamental belief. So much so that I was just in Tonga earlier doing a Talanoa hub, and I couldn't sit next to my friend's, I had to sit in the front with my friend's brother because she couldn't sit next to him. So why I'm saying this is because you can now see why it's really important that we understand these principles. And whono ainga was one of the huge transformative times for all of the guys on the program. Because for the first time, for many of them, the first time for them to even be in front of their ainga, their family, and to actually discuss the offending. From the time that they went to court, parents probably wouldn't have even known. They may have just gone in, decided to plead out. Guilt and shame are the number one, I would say, guilt and shame is the number one imprisoning dynamic for our Pacific men. They would rather plead out and go into remand than to give an address for their parents. Because they're just so full of guilt and shame, so never mind, I'll just go and... And so when the whono of ainga actually occur inside, there's just not a dry eye in the room. Even us. And we're supposed to be psychologists. We're not supposed to cry, eh? Get Ray. And so for me, we're navigating new paths. I think our former head of state said it best. And what I've done now is I've tried to take my practice and my academic research and merge it together into what I call New Indigenous Unity of Pacific Humanitarians. So we started off kind of as this cluster, research cluster, but now we've become kind of this virtual research collective that are doing a whole lot of stuff in the disaster space, in the climate change space, in and throughout the Pacific. And so I moved from the family violence to the humanitarian space because to me, the work that we're doing, and I'd say you as psychologists, are actually works of humanity. They're works of compassion. I know my colleagues, and please, I know I've been a bit strong earlier on, forgive me. I know you don't mean any ill will at all. When I was an early practitioner, I was actually quite angry and annoyed at you, not you. But I used to think, why do these cases keep coming back? Why do I have to keep picking them up? And I was getting annoyed at that process. But I recognize that not one of us come into this profession because we mean harm. Not one of us come into this profession because we mean harm. I know that. And I guess I'm here not trying to persuade you, but trying to be a voice from the margin to show you what it is that we actually carry within us as children of the diaspora. I use the term diaspora, and Pacific people use the term diaspora because our parents, they dispersed from these different Pacific nations, and so we're now here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But in our hearts, we carry our island values, beliefs, our ideals, the languages of our island nations. While some may not speak, they speak it in their heart because they're seeing o le va'ai, o le whaalongo, o le tautala, to see, to hear, and to talk story. That's our literacy framework. I went to Samoa, I did the study like back in 99. And the Samoan teachers were saying to me, oh, don't worry about reading and writing, that just comes later. Don't worry, it's okay. Main thing, they know how to talk. So you see, even in that fundamental learning space, they're not worried if you can hold a pen and write your name. They just want to know, can you see where you belong in this family? Can you hear the love? And then, if you do, that you will be able to talk, whether or not you can physically do that or even through your actions. And so I think one thing that I would offer to our society is to think about the children of the Pacific diaspora, because they're here. They're all here. They're here at this university for sure, no doubt. They're carriers of Indigenous knowledge. They're your facilitators of communication during critical times. I was first responder to the Samoan tsunami in 2009. And one of the things that came strongly to me was how easily we could access the local response team. The local team were coordinating this. But because I had been there since 2005, training basic counselling skills for their counsellors, I knew who we could call on easily. And so instead of needing to bring more and more people over from New Zealand, they had their theological students who were already out in the villages. And so we set up training, Psych 101, Psych First Aid 101, so to speak, a little bit of a version of that, for the theological students. And we're continuing to carry that on now. So I set up a thing called Talanoa Hubs, which is basically Humans United Beyond Borders in 2015 when we were in Tonga. This was pre-Cyclone Gita. And so we were going back, and the idea around our Talanoa Hubs is that there are a lot of people at the local level actually who have no idea about the poster around the tsunami warning and the disaster. Because we come over there with our Flash, New Zealand and Oz Aid money, and we put up these things, but actually we don't even engage the communities. Truly, we're not engaging them. And so the idea behind this was to let the local people lead. So we have a partnership here in Aotearoa, New Zealand with our South Auckland hub called Community Cafe in Mangere, with an organisation called Affirming Works, and this is their factory. They grow Tongan coffee, the best actually. I know a number of our professors at Massey University, that's why they come, because they love this coffee. I wasn't actually I don't even really know anything about coffee, but when those guys started telling me, man, that is awesome coffee, I said to Emmeline, who runs the cafe, hey, your coffee's really good. She said, of course it's good, I've been telling you that. I went, oh, okay, that's good, it's good to know. Anyway, I digress. So going back, we've been there 2017. This year, post-Cyclone Gita, we ran another one around community resilience and natural disasters. And this just allows their own Met Service people, their own National Emergency Management Office to lead. We bring in a couple of our profs in the disaster space, and they're really just there just to facilitate, but it's really showcasing the local knowledge. It's allowing these guys to show their own community, hello, we did all this coordination during that time of disaster. We know what we're doing. And Tonga is the only Pacific nation that has Indigenous knowledge built into their disaster risk management plan as a nation. Internationally, that's huge on the UN stage. And so I finish with our Gainga Tū Mālia program, going back to family violence, but still within the space of Pacific Indigenous knowledge, to show a Tongan faith-based community program addressing family violence. One that we did a review of, and one that actually involves a whole lot of people. I'm not Tongan, but I brought on a Tongan Sesemani there, who was our research officer, and now enrolled in her PhD, actually doing a confirmation in 2 weeks' time, in psychology. And this involved a whole lot of families. So when we think families, we're not thinking 2 adults, 1 child, right? We're thinking big families, which is why we had roughly around over 200 people in this program. So it might just be 4 churches, and I know people are calculating fast going, wowzers. So on average, that's how many people per family? Massive, right? But the impact for me, not actually being Tongan and recognizing myself, so this allowed me an opportunity to even sit back. Because of course I was fully immersed in Saʻinimatangi, but now I'm not even Tongan. I'm not Tongan. So now I'm sitting on the periphery myself and seeing how Tongan Pacific Indigenous knowledge embedded in their faith is so transformative for these families. Because if you understand Tongan culture, you'll understand that it's actually very hierarchical. Because it's a kingdom. And actually, it's the oldest kingdom, as Tongans would say, on the earth. It was kingdom before England, okay? So make sure you know that, okay? Did you know that, guys? I didn't know that. But if you're Tongan out there, don't slay me, okay? I was at a youth rally, Whono Samoa youth rally, and I was really nervous because the night before, actually, it was meant to be my husband that was speaking. And my mother had passed last year, and Papakura PIC was now hosting, and we're talking roughly maybe 1,000 to 1,500 people for the weekend. And this night is their youth rally night, and this night draws in like huge big numbers from all over Auckland. And on this night, they asked us to speak. And I was nervous for this slot, but that slot, man, I was on another level, anxious, anxiety, because it's now my own people, right? I now have to talk to them heart to heart. I now have to ask and plead of them that they understand what's happening in and around them. And I spoke to them about my job in Saʻinimatangi, that the statistics are not faring too well if they were Pacific men. They had a good laugh. I said, Sole, it's not funny. And I asked of them that if they were to see their brother inside the circles of this youth rally, I hope that outside they wouldn't try and knock him out. And I guess for me, that's my reality. Because I am a child of the Pacific diaspora, born and bred in South Auckland. Well, no, born in Dunedin, bred in South Auckland. And for me as a psychologist, we might see us in the halls of our academia and we might think, oh, well, she's got her whole life together. But actually, in my community, there's so much that's required of us. I wanted to play you a little bit of what I experienced at the youth rally before I close, because it will give me a little bit of hope.
Hallelujah.
guess I just needed to hear the sounds of our young people. I stand here in the legacy of my late mother to plead with you all in this year of our psychological society celebration, where the divide between the rich, psychology, and the poor, us, I guess, as Pacific, where the statistics show we're really deprived, to ask whether we have the courage as a society to reset our mission of psychology within Aotearoa New Zealand. Whawhate lava.
Kia ora. How does one sum that up? And Frantz Fanon said that fervour is the weapon of the marginalised, and fervour and passion and anger can come across as, we want to silence, we may want to silence, but fervour is there for a reason, and Siautu so clearly demonstrated that she is passionate for her people, and she's making a plea to psychology to rethink and reset. So, does anybody have a question? Does anybody have something they want to say?
Talofa, Siautu, thank you very much. 25 years ago, in the same setting, well, actually it was a much more historic setting, but Taimaritu Kiwi Tamasesi spoke about the role of women in Samoan tradition as providing balance with the men in governance and leadership. And that one of the critical moves of the coloniser were to put the women effectively into house arrest and depriving the men and the society of their role in leadership. And I thought you were relating to that when you talked about the brother-sister bonds, but I wondered whether you could just briefly link the two ideas.
Might pass this over to my master navigator. If I'm hearing you right, Ray, you're talking about the place of woman, leadership, and the notion of whenga. Well, I think in Samoa, for example, whenga, the woman, the apple of the brother's eye, which is obviously why the brothers do so much for the sisters, but also that the female or the sister, as I've heard so much from my father, they're the ones that actually keep the peace. So they're the ones, as you rightfully identified, they're the peacemakers. And so when things are out of balance, obviously it's because we're not fulfilling those roles.
Thank you. I bought my iPad thinking I was going to need something to keep me occupied, and I'm afraid I haven't opened it. When I listen to you talking about the relationship between, defining an individual by the village and by the family, you're talking about Pacific peoples, but to me it highlighted how far in the other direction and how badly in the other direction our Kiwi Pākehā culture has got, when we have a whole generation of people who, I'm talking about my generation, and Barry's, for whom that one of the principal complaints and issues and problems is that of social isolation. And it seems that we've gone so far, you know, we've even gone beyond the sort of the nucleus family, where we are systematically isolating people whose needs change because it's inconvenient and all the rest of it. And we have elderly people who have nothing with which they can define their lives. So thank you. And I think when you've finished this work, I think it's like a missionary role, isn't it, to help us achieve similar or even envisage similar goals.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hear that often now because we've got another research. We just were granted a HRC grant to actually look at the care of elders. We're starting that on the 1st of October. And really what it showed, and I've been working with two of our Massey professors, Chris Stevens and Fiona Allpass in this area. And what they were saying is basically in the New Zealand findings that elderly, or just kind of as a throwaway, you know, so you get to a certain age at retirement and then, okay, that's it, be done with. Whereas we know in Pacific, that's not the case. So, you know, we have a lot of our stresses, for example, can come from all the intergenerational living, the mobilizing of families, how they're mobilizing to care. And I think this is what I'm saying. I'm drawing and I'm pleading on us to work together. You know, how are ways that we can actually work together with our young Pacific researchers, our Pacific Psych students, to gather their insights and to think about what is it that they're doing in their everyday that might actually provide a solution for New Zealand. So like you said, social isolation, it's huge. But, you know, the Pacific people, like they, you know, the Radio New Zealand was asking me, what's the deal with the garages and the sliding doors in South Auckland? Everywhere you go in South Auckland, if it's a double garage, it's got a double sliding door, right? Well, we all know because it's a big area, you can open it up, you can it's mobile too for our elders. They're thinking, oh, you're just shoving your elders in there. It's like, no, it's practical. There's a practical purpose because a lot of people come in and some of the houses, you know, the lounge is small. So then they'll convert the garage, make it big, it's a bigger whale, you can get a wheelchair in and out. So it's got that kind of function to it. So people think, oh. So then we begin to, you know, think, what are some of these ways of living that could perhaps come back and, as you identified, help us to maybe look at the way our lifestyles are, if that makes any sense.
Thank you, Siautu. I'm just going to stop it there. For those of you who I know had some questions, if you could please, if you really want to have an answer to that question, catch up with Siautu after this. And we have a pese, we have a song for Siautu, and I just want to say thank you so much. And you know, a lot of us have talked about, you know, the Indigenous person and what does indigeneity, Indigenous psychology mean for psychology. Well, it's not always just about us. I mean, of course it is from our perspective because we have, you know, a whole lot of things that we want psychology to do. But, you know, as you raise, it's an exchange. You know, this knowledge, it's a knowledge exchange. And, you know, that was such a good picture. You know, how were those white guys in their room in Oxford going to do anything about the guys? And I think the point was made that knowledge is actually, the whakapapa of psychological knowledge comes from there, and it's being applied in this context. So it's a knowledge exchange, and that's reason why we are trying to do so much for what we are. Rabbiting on. Siautu. So Siautu and I were on the psychologist board together, so she was also part of developing the psychological, the competencies, the accreditation documents and so on. So we've, you know, sat back up in those halls and talked about how we can make psychology relevant. And so it's there, the material is there. And Siautu, on behalf of te rōpū nei, anei tō koha ki a koe. And
ia ale I ngā ale I whai tato tai au nei lo tato sauninga le nei tai au ia e avea ia leo e whai mathui e mamoli atu ai lava whaftai te le lava I lau sunga le ena mo le thaunia le leo lo talanoanga le nei tai au o te iloa e le ia te o le poto o te iloa le ata mai le poto mai le atua a leo te fia whaftai atu lava o te fia mamoli atu fo il whaftai I lau a fionga, whaamalia atu ua le ilo atu lau suafa I le nei tai au, a te whia mamoli atu whaftai, I te maa Siautu, mo lau whaatasi mai le nei tai au. Ia, le ena e te iloa, e le ia te I mātou se manuia, e le ia te I mātou foi se, e le lava foi whaftai atu oi, ia mātou I atu oi. Ai mātou tu inu I lumo le atua, o a mea ua, ngā opa ua ave ese ino ono o lau whaatasi mai le nei tai au ma le saunia le leo lau talanoanga mātou te tuilu mo le atua o ia na te toi whaatutumu mea ua ngau. O le a mātou sauni atu foi se pese whatau waa whamali atu pe a le kau sasi foi leo le nei tai au ai mātou whaftai laftu lawe I lau sunga mo lau talamai ma lau whaatasi mai le nei tai au.
Whawhawhetai, wa mari e mata e vai, wa tasi lava oi, I lo nei wha moi moi. Hey!